Yeah. Well, are you tired? I have one more topic.
Go for it.
Okay, I want to tie some of this performance and music theory together and talk about improvisation. I think this
Mhm.
is of interest to you. I think you even like to teach it. Is that correct?
I I am very interested uh, in the general area of improvisation musically. I'm very interested in the idea of improvising musically on the keyboard and being able to do so within kind of systems that I can follow and recreate and reproduce myself. I aspire to improvisation in the sense of using it in limited ways during church playing. I like the idea of being able to just create music on the spot and to do it just uh, like instantaneously. So it is a goal point for me in certain ways that I teach certain subjects and certain topics that I hope that it will provide a source of creativity for students that causes me to sometimes improvise in front of them using these systems and just to be
Mm.
able to show them, yes, you can actually make music on the spot this way. So I value any kind of open thought and discussion surrounding improvisation.
So you're actually able to, as a performer and a music theorist, use music theory to support your assertion that it can be a tool which can keep us safe so that our improvisations are gratifying.
Well, yes, and gratifying with that very safe word of predictability and consistency. So this is where it's definitely not anything goes. And so if I improvise in a manner that will produce or reproduce a kind of tonal sound overall, I can play chord progressions all day long and keep them going because I know how to connect the chords together. I know how to kind of structure things into phrases and make phrases relate to one another. Relatively speaking, it's actually not all that difficult in terms of stating the rules that make this happen. What might be challenging to convey to a person is to do it in real time. It's almost like the musical analogy of treading water in the pool, which I do very poorly, but which I know will help keep me afloat and just keeping on going and going and going and kind of having, I don't know, a sense that life will go on, things will happen. And you're going to be, even if you kind of fall flat on your face with one musical moment, no worries, there's tomorrow. And we can get up and we can just start afresh and just keep on going after the fact.
Well, this is a wonderful uh, human sentiment. Is it accurate in terms of performance? Don't we want to create perfect performances?
Well, I want to hear performances and I want to give performances that are compelling and performances that cause people to think deeply about what they're hearing or give them a memory or give them experience with something or maybe recreate an experience or cause them to have a memory of something that was meaningful to them before. Would I say that it takes a perfect performance to make that happen? It depends on how you define perfection. Is perfection just getting all the right notes and the right rhythms all the time? I don't think so. I mean, that would be a kind of computer style, performance style uh, method of showing a level of perfection. But does that inform me of humanity necessarily? It might not. And that's what I want to convey. I want to convey music as a human expression.
I see. So, do we need improvisation in that regard? Can't we simply just vary up our performances a little bit?
Improvisation is vital, it's necessary. Improvisation, I believe, historically has been the laboratory for composers. I think that improvisation is where composers try out ideas, they experiment, and sometimes experiments succeed. Maybe those musical ideas go down into history as written pieces of music, or maybe sometimes improvisations fail musically, in which case, great, that's the cutting room floor. That's what we do not see kind of taken over and shown in successive levels of history. I think improvisation is absolutely required in the creative musical experience, just so that we know what we're doing. I, my experience of this, the way that I learned how to improvise in certain ways was by practicing certain scales and certain types of scalar relationships, modes in early days when I was trying to get some handle on some jazz activity and finding that just the activity of playing up and down a kind of scale or a mode drifted into shaping melodies as I would go up and down, playing notes of a scale or mode, and recognizing that I couldn't just play the scale or the mode. I actually wanted to make music with it in this at the same level of time. So the creativity seems to have almost been involuntary in a way. I think improvisation is vital and necessary.
So when you are, I think this confuses people. They see improvisation as free. Um, but yet we are describing improvisation as working within a set of constraints. When do you cross over from playing within a set of rules into music making?
That's a very good question. And I think that's what we all strive for if we improvise, making the improvisation really memorable, almost to the point where the improvisation itself becomes something that you do want to capture in print. And if that's the case, then I ask the question, is it any longer improvisation? You know, by crossing the line and trying to preserve something that might have seemed perfect at one moment in time, that maybe loses its status as being fundamental to the art of improvisation itself. So I remember hearing this from a very good jazz pianist when I was in my high school days and hearing him talk about improvisation, that fundamental to improvisation is being able to let go,
Mhm.
that we aim for wonderful performance, but once it's done, it's done. And, as great as it might have been, it's gone. There might be a musical memory of that, but if it's an improvisation, you have to let go.
Yeah, it's been interesting for me working at a church where the service is recorded every week. Sometimes, I have the urge to go back and listen to some of my improvisations and see were they really as great as they sounded. And where many times, they felt amazing and the audience took them as amazing. So they served their purpose, they were inspirational, and yet they don't really rise to the level of listening to them again. It's very interesting. And sometimes they do. Occasionally there is that one that has the structure that would allow it to, but not always and not even often. Sometimes it's just talking and being heard.
Exactly. Well, therein lies the art of it. I mean, why would we do something continually if we could actually do it easily enough? I think the kind of interesting thing about music making in general is sometimes it's not easy. And therefore, there is a reward for coming back to it again and again and again. So, improvisation, to the extent that it's an enriching experience, I think it's enriching because of the fact that to succeed at it, it takes a lot of work. And like when you get it, it's great, but it might not be every day of the week. It might not be every day of the year. But therein lies the beauty of the moment where you do succeed and you feel like, this was really good. This was kind of a very satisfying musical moment, even for the person who's doing the playing, let alone for the people who are hearing what they're hearing.
Yeah. Improvisation has been around for millennia. It may have been the primary mode of playing for a long, long time. When we started getting into Bach, yes, most of that music is written down, and yet he was a renowned improviser, as were his heroes. Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, all of these people were known to be able to improvise very well. French composers Saint-Saëns and César Franck, legendary improvisers, the stories people would tell about their improvisations, and even as late as Messiaen. And yet, improvisation took a hit in the late 19th and early 20th century. Uh, um, you know, and yet at the same time, it seems to be making a comeback. In our interview with Kate Boyd last week, she talked about how there's more of an acceptance of it now and a willing to teach it. Are you finding that in the university that improvisation is making a comeback in the classical world?
Absolutely. There's a greater degree of interest, particularly in areas of music theory that are focused on using the tools and the techniques of the past as kind of a creative um, foundation for composing in real time. I mean, that's another way of defining improvisation, literally musical creation at a certain moment in time. And recognizing that, especially within tonal music, that, as you mentioned, when Bach would do it, for example, and he was working within a kind of system, and there are boundary lines within the system and procedures that one can follow. So yes, it is humanly possible, and therefore, more and more people are recognizing that improvisation is not just pure inspiration. It's not just like a lightning bolt moment happening individually. That there is a way of practicing techniques that allow one to be creative within that moment. And so it is more and more possible to imagine doing this, us plebes doing it in a way, the common folk, hundreds of years after the fact.
Bruce Frank, if people want to learn more about you or hear some of your performances or maybe talk to you, how is that possible?
Well, contacting me by email, bfrank345@gmail.com. That's one good way. I'm the church that I play at, that First Presbyterian Church in Pittsford, New York. We have a live stream service that we do, and we record at least one of our services every Sunday on YouTube video. So some of my performances I would hold up as pretty decent, sometimes not the highest things that I would always want to advertise, but they're there. Some of the performances I actually really am proud of over time. And I am playing a full-scale kind of service where there's a prelude and a postlude, and usually at least an offertory in the service, often which I am kind of improvising during that time, and kind of playing around with the hymns to a certain degree, improvising certain moments within hymns, but being creative within the kind of interesting framework of what that hymn provides. There's a body of playing that I recognize now that is on YouTube, and it's got me playing the organ there. So that's one resource.
Bruce Frank, it's every conversation I have with you is just a treat. Thank you so much for coming on the show and getting one of these down.
Thank you very much, Adam. I look forward to the next time that you want to talk about anything.
That sounds really great. And we want to thank you, audience, and invite you, if you liked this conversation, which went all over the place, or if you don't understand some of this conversation, leave a comment. Let us know what you want to know more about or what you really liked learning about. Like these videos so more people can hear them. Tell people about us. And if there's someone you want me to talk to, or if you want to talk to me, get in contact with me. Thanks very much, friends. We'll see you next time.